got Eric Durack. He is the founder of Med Health Fit, and then you're a principal involved with LifeCore, the HSA group, correct?
Okay. I'm getting some feedback. There we go. Okay, go ahead.
You got some feedback? You got me now?
No, I'm all
cool.
set.
Can you hear me?
All set. Thanks. Yes.
Awesome. Cool.
Two voices,
my guys, we'll take care of it.
Okay.
Oh, no worries. So anyway, just framing this up right now, founder of Med Health Fit, and then you're a principal involved with LifeCore, the HSA company, correct?
I am.
Okay. Walk me through what would do on career day when you were in 7th grade. Did you walk over to the Med Health and the HSA booth and be like, this sounds like a lot of fucking fun. I want to get into that. What's the quick trajectory that gets you into this world?
Okay. So 35 years ago, after I graduated from Michigan, go Blue, I worked for the sports training.
See, now we're off to a bad fucking start, Eric, because I'm an Ohio State Buckeye fan, and this is just.
Listen, you beat our ass for 10 years in a row, and you can't take it. All right, so just take a breath. Take a breath. I'm evolving my story here, so let's start from New York. So I started my career in New York City at the Sports Training Institute. I started as a personal trainer, but the reason that Michigan is important is that I did a master's thesis in strength training that I presented at the National Strength and Conditioning Association's national conference. So I was the research guy.
That's awesome.
So about a month after I came back from the conference, my boss said, "Hey, how'd you like to move to California? Because there's this famous diabetes research center out there that's looking to start an exercise lab." So I moved out to here, Santa Barbara, been here ever since, and I worked for Sansom Medical Research Institute, which is now the Sansom Diabetes Research Institute. And William Sansom was the first American physician in 1931 to administer insulin to a diabetic patient. He was following hot on the heels of Banting and Best in Toronto, Canada, who did it about a year before. So Sansom has always had this, especially on the West Coast here, they've always had this mantra of really doing good diabetes work. And we did exercise studies in type 1, type 2, and also gestational diabetes. So I had to learn an awful lot about exercise during pregnancy and then apply it to women who had diabetes. So I was involved with diabetes care. And also we had researchers in cancer and metabolic stuff, back in the 80s. And so here I am all this time later, and this whole issue of Ozempic, GLP-1 starts to come into the fray in terms of, I think it was back in December or January when Lifetime Fitness hired this longevity company, and the whole thing about Ozempic came up. And of course, what I started doing was digging in a little bit into the research and said, okay, well, what are trainers going to need to know? Because I started working with diabetic patients in the 80s, and there was no research on how to do strength training. And I did the first strength training study. And then 7-8 years later, I worked with cancer patients in the early to mid 90s. There was no research on strength training. I had to formulate all of this stuff. I had to kind of walk through the landmine before all of the other trainers, did, and say, okay, so what is a really good exercise prescription? And in my career, I've worked with people who've had Raynaud syndrome, end-stage renal disease, hypertension, metabolic insufficiencies, peripheral vascular disease, on and on and on. And then I spent 17 years at the University of California working in injury prevention. So I worked on the orthopedic side and had, I did stretching programs and mind-body programs and orthopedic programs and all of that kind of stuff. So I think that at my age now, I'm in a really good position to sort of look at this situation with GLP-1s and GIPs. And, there's 10 of these medications now on the market, and say, okay, so what do trainers need to know in terms of the risk benefit of working with these folks? Because as you know, Stu, you have people who don't eat, they don't drink, and then they go into a gym and they work out. It's like the worst combination ever. So, my thought process is like, what's going to be the ideal exercise prescription for someone on 0.5 milligrams of GLP versus someone on 2.5 milligrams, someone who's at 27% or 27 BMI versus 35 or 36 BMI. Someone who's 35 years old versus someone who's 62 years old. So I'm actually trying to put together all of these things now in a certification course, which is coming out in the next few weeks. And I'm calling it my Mr. Holland's Opus. If you're a film fan, you remember the Richard Dreyfuss movie.
I do. I remember the movie.
His whole career writing this symphony that never gets played until he actually retires. And so here I am at the crux of my career. And I said to friends of mine years ago, because I've done about 7 certification courses in my career: medical fitness, cancer coaching, home health care, down the line, blood labs, etc. And I'll never do that again. Well, here I am. So, but I want it to be really, really good, because the industry needs this. Because as much as I sort of look at all of the foibles of working with these people, it is a massive opportunity, Stu. It's massive.
So let's say real quick, I bet you if I were to walk into any gym right now or talk to a trainer, gun to head, and I said, give me a definition, an operational definition of what a GLP-1 is, most of them wouldn't have a fucking clue. So can you, and I want to just summarize this. It's essentially, it is a hormone that could definitely be used in these diabetic type scenarios, but also has some solid properties that can be used for people with severe obesity. That's as much as I know about it. It's a glucagon-like peptide, which is the GLP, correct? Glucagon-like. Okay. Can you, now that's my dumb version. Can you give us the smarter version?
Well, but I'm not. I'm not an endocrinologist in a lot of the like the step 1 trial, the step 2 trial, all these types of things that sort of delineate all this stuff. Number one, it helps increase insulin production out of the pancreas. Number 2, it helps reduce glucagon production, out of the liver. And number 3, it's an appetite suppressant. So that it's working on something in the brain. And before we went online, I was telling you just 30 minutes ago, I was reading a report on people there. It's called Ozempic behavior or something, where they're starting not to think clearly because, well, and I would imagine if you're dehydrated and hungry all the time, yeah, you're probably not thinking correctly. And so, I mean, that's really the lay of the land for a trainer. They need to know that it's got, 3 different physiologic mechanisms here. And how do I work around that? How do I navigate the exercise prescription around the fact that they've got higher levels of insulin, which means that they may crash, even though they're not diabetic. They actually may crash with exercise, and crashing means that they become hypoglycemic very, very quickly. And number 2, they're not thinking very, very well. So the thing is like with exercise, do you give them water? Do you give them an electrolyte replacement, glucose, in smaller amounts? Do you actually help, in terms of one of the things that we know about this, Stu, is that it reduces lean body mass. But any weight loss program reduces lean body mass. It just depends on the percentage. And so the thing is like, do you actually give these people creatine, post exercise? You might. I don't understand why not. Creatine is not very calorically dense, and it actually may help with recovery. So I've always said in a number of different types of situation, if you can train someone like an athlete, because athletes get the best care, they get the best recovery, they get the best nutrition, they get the best, sports training things, as opposed to Joe Average goes into a club and he tries to do all the weight training stuff on his own. Trainers now need to understand that working with these people, and here's my 30,000 foot view. You work with them, they're losing weight anyway. You're trying to maintain as much muscle mass as you can. You're trying to teach them about hydration, nutrition, exercise, and you keep them as members for life. And I'm going to tell you a quick story about that. My father in 1963 bought a lifetime membership to Universal Health Spas in Lansing, Michigan. And my mother almost divorced him. You paid $135 for a gym membership? Are you crazy, George? When he passed away in 2006, he was the last lifetime member. and I think it was bought by Bally's at the time. I'm not sure, but some young 25-year-old kid came to the podium at his memorial and said that, Mr. Durack was the last lifetime member of this club, and we're honoring him at this memorial because he did for 40 years. He had a club membership. I think it was $4.12 a month. I did the numbers, but anyway. But my father was, big into exercise, and he thought the lifetime membership was a good thing. I think clubs should look at people who are taking, and I'll just use the word Ozempic because everybody knows it, that are on these GLPs, these GIPs, these Ozempic medications, and say, you know what, if you can come in and you can stay with your 20-week program, we're going to give you a membership for life. And why not? These people wouldn't come to the club anyway.
Sure.
They're not health club members.
Sure. Or the inverse pricing model. Your price actually goes up the less you attend. So
Absolutely.
You have dynamic pricing based on attendance. And so you just create a habit based on the consequence. So let me ask you this. So for trainers and coaches and gym owners and anyone listening to this, they can't prescribe this. You need to be a medical doctor to make the prescription, correct?
Absolutely. Correct.
So how do they get involved? What is the angle for anyone in the fitness industry who's like, hey, listen, because there's a lot of like, it's bad. And you got the whole group of people doing peptides and TRT, but don't like this. And it's like, listen, motherfuckers, it's just like, at this day and age, if we can get a leg up with advances in medicine and things like that. And again, it's not got a 10-year proof of concept yet, right? Like your certification, I guess actually correct me if I'm wrong there.
You mean, does this medication have proof of concept?
Like, I guess how many people in this particular application for weight loss that suppress all that, like how many people have gone through this on a long enough basis to where like we've got a really, really firm idea as to how this reacts? Like you mentioned all the different kinds of people taking this amount at this age, at this BMI.
Right. Well, in my research manderings for this, I came across the step 1 through step 5 trials. And the step 1 trial is the famous one because they put people on Ozempic for a year and then they cut them loose. And guess what happened? They gained almost all the weight back. But essentially, they I don't know if it was some sort of crossover randomized or whatever, but I'm a field research guy. My clients right now who I work with field studies. And my mindset on this, and I'm hoping that I will start to have clients who want me to follow their GLP patients for a year, 2 years, 3 years, that these patients will lose the weight. And again, with medicine, that was it. Well, there's so many things that the fitness industry can do that Jenny Craig cannot, Weight Watchers cannot. That what's the other one? Noom cannot, because Noom is a technology company, and Jenny Craig and Weight Watchers are food in a box companies. So they're looking at just portion size and all these things. Health clubs have such a great opportunity, which I'll probably say another 40 times here, that you have the strength training. And we don't know the long-term effects. Now, I work with a physician in Los Angeles named Dr. Ryan Green, and he's CEO of Monarch Medical Health Clubs. And his business is doing extremely well right now. And he's one of the few doctors that I know who's been working with Ozempic patients for almost 2 years. And he said, Eric, it's almost impossible for them to gain lean tissue. And as a holistic, he's a physician, but as a holistic doc and a strength training doc, I'm imagining he's probably got them on some sort of hydration program, specific nutrition program, protein supplement program, etc. And it's still very, very difficult, especially depending on the dosage. And doctors actually are dosing up. If you're a person who's at a 28 BMI and you're at 0.5 or 1 milligram, in the next few months, you may be at 1.5 or 2 milligrams. So you may actually double your dose. Whereas my mindset in the fitness industry is once you get onto a strength training program, you need to start having that patient work with their doctor to scale down their medication and eventually scale down to 0, because that's the only logical conclusion that I can come to. Now, I'm not the FDA or any of these other people. They don't think logically. This is a shareholder value. And this is going to be, I mean, Forbes magazine just had a recent thing about just how big this is going to be. And the Harrison Group, they're the consulting lawyer group for the health and fitness industry, they predicted that this is going to be a $24 billion opportunity for health clubs. $24 billion. So, you know, when you're talking about dollar signs that much, everyone's going to want to get in on this. And you just said this is not going to be 36, years or whatever. This is going to be something where month by month by month, another health club chain is coming on board.
And, Lindora being the most recent one to get announced. So Exponential added they're the largest, they're the world's largest boutique fitness brand. And this is the first brick and mortar they've added that isn't actually group fitness exercise. Lindora is going to be this intersection of wellness and fitness and metabolic health. It's a house of metabolic health and weight loss, and GLP-1s and Ozempic are going to be a big part of that. Yeah. So do you believe that? So the way I look at it from a market perspective, there's either going to be independent shops like Lindora that pop up and then that's the boutique spot to go get this stuff done. And then the gyms or the health clubs could also pop these up. They could take that, back in the day, when I would consult with health clubs, give me about 1,000 square feet. I'd put about, 20 tanning salons or 20 tanning beds in there. And we'd fucking pack the gyms with these tanning memberships and upsell them the gym membership. Take that area that's got a fucking shitty racquetball court that no one's using, and you can put a medical office in there or whatever you can and upfit it to that degree. So at that point, I'm just trying to think, what's the unique sales, what's the benefit? I guess maybe for the health clubs, because like you said, they now have the trainer who has the strength training and all that. And the trainer is working in conjunction with this medicine. And you got to, raise the training IQ or the education of these individuals. Because are there certain things that trainer is not very much I'm sure to the terms of your certification? What are things a trainer would not realize I probably shouldn't do with this individual, or I should do with this individual who's on this medicine?
Number one, and I'll start with strength training because I think it's the base. I agree with a lot of the articles in Prevention Magazine, Forbes, The Atlantic, etc., that are talking about the Ozempic craze and that health clubs are going to benefit because they have strength training. Okay, well that's number one. You have equipment that no doctor's office has. Fantastic. So you've solved problem number one, but you. As someone who's programmed for cancer patients, and I actually have a section in my certification that compares people on chemotherapy agents, which are catabolic, no doubt about it. If you're a cancer survivor and you're taking a certain type of chemotherapy regime, you're having a hell of a time, A, keeping muscle mass on, and B, keeping your food down. So they're actually sort of similar edicts with cancer care and Ozempic. And so my thing is, how do you actually prescribe the program? So in week 1, they're doing, 2 sets of this. And then in week 4 to 6, they're doing 3 to 4 sets at a higher percentage, work to rest ratio, perceived exertion, heart rate, checks, et cetera, et cetera. So I'm putting all of that into my program, is that each week you should actually have what I'll call a ramped up program based on their ability to do it, based on, their weight, their blood pressure, all the things that now a trainer you have to do. You just can't put someone on the weights. You have to make sure they know what their blood pressure is, their heart rate, adaptation to training, their perceived exertion like 7 times during the course of that session, because they're going to get dizzy. They're not going to feel well because they're not eating anything. It's a really tough, this is going to be a tough thing for trainers because these people are dehydrated. That's my number one thing. They're dehydrated. The Dr. Green told me he's got patients that just forget to eat. I said, how can you forget to eat? When I'm off the podcast with you, I'm going in the hallway to my fridge and I'm getting me an orange or something. How can you forget this stuff? But people forget. And if you're forgetting to eat, you're probably forgetting that you have to hydrate during the course of the day as well. And it's the dehydration that I see over time is not only going to have effects on muscle contraction and heart contractility, but it's also going to have problems with your liver your filtration system in general because of the viscosity of the blood and all of these other issues that trainers don't really think about. Well, I had to think about them 30 years ago because I work with diabetic patients and cancer patients who had these similar types of issues. So all of these things run through the back of my mind. And in writing my Mr. Holland's opus, I want to put all this stuff in the book because I want to give people the benefits of my very integrative. I was really blessed, Stu. When I came to Santa Barbara and I walked into this medical research center, I literally was working with some of the world's best diabetes doctors. And my mentor, Dr. Lois Jovanovic, was widely considered the world's leading authority in the management of gestational diabetes. And she started the high protein, high fat diets for diabetic patients in the late 1970s and early 80s. So she was way ahead of these paleo diet people, way ahead. And she before she passed away, I think she had over 480 scientific research studies and about 15 or 20 medical textbooks that she wrote. So I was extremely fortunate to work with people at that high level. And so again, I want to bring it back around. This is my paying it forward to the industry.
So for any trainer or coach listening to this, and they're like, fuck it. I don't need to include more information. I know enough about training and coaching. I've been doing it for X amount of years.
Okay.
And if my clients get on it, I'll be fine. And then what I would say to them, I said, oh yeah, fuckface. What is the worst thing that ever happens to a client? If you're a personal trainer or a gym owner, what's the one amazing thing that happens to a client that's horrible for your business typically? Pregnancy. When a woman gets pregnant, at a certain point, she tells her coach or her Orange Theory or her personal trainer, yeah, my doctor says whatever. But if that trainer is pre and postnatal certified, instantly it's, oh, okay, you know how to deal with me. Clients and human beings, when they have something happening to them unique, they want somebody who has a specific certification. Just like anyone listening to this, they prefer the commercial real estate company that only specializes in gyms, or they prefer the website company that only does fitness. Your customers are going to want to hear like, so are you, whatever this will be, GLP certified or whatever this is, so you know how to train me based on these injections that I'm getting so I don't get fucked up.
Right.
I just think people, like, I can listen to them, I can hear my audience making these little side comments in their head, and I'm like, guys, this already happens with pregnancy. How many of you have lost clients because the client was like, yeah, I'm not going to do this while I'm pregnant? It's because they didn't have faith that you were going to be able to do right by them because their body is going through this thing. And argue to your point, in a certification like yours, it makes sense, for a trainer to be able to say, nope, I'm good. I have this thing here. I've gone through this education and I can train you.
Right. Well, and I'm going to come back to the cancer world. 30 years ago, when I started one of the nation's first cancer and exercise programs, number one, Stu, there was no research. I was basically shooting blind. Dr. Merrill Winningham did some of the original research on bicycles in a hospital, but nobody exercising in a health club. And today there are over 18,000 certified cancer exercise specialists through my friend and colleague, Andrea Leonard, at the Cancer Exercise Institute. And I'm also part of a sort of a behind the scenes group of people who are trying to get Medicare and Medicaid, CMS, to have specific exercise CPT coding for cancer wellness programs. And I just found out here this week that that some large organization has just recognized exercise and cancer as part of their medical standard of practice. And I see the same thing is going to happen with GLP, because it's going to be, I believe, the biggest thing to happen to the health club industry in the history of health club. I do believe it, because everybody in America is overweight. So when you heard 20 years ago, well, we only have 20% of the market. Well, okay, so if you can get 20% of the 80% to come into a club, you've just doubled your membership. And if you can get most of those people who are going to be on, and millions of people are going to be on this med sooner than later. And if they know that that a health club is going to be one element of self-control that they can go to and they can help themselves for a long period of time, I think it's going to be a win for everybody.
Yeah, I want to talk on that. I want to ask you real quick, why can't cancer patients, when they're going through all this catabolic chemo? I just had my dear friend and business partner, I lost him to multiple myeloma. And I saw a man who, very muscular, strong dude, just a vibrant 50-year-old wither away to the size of this fucking pen. And why can't they get on TRT or anything to help to counteract that?
They probably, this
or is it not? It's just different.
Well, okay. So I used to get into debates with oncologists about supplementation, and they would tell me, well, when a patient's on supplementation, or they shouldn't take this or this or this because it'll affect their chemotherapy. And my attitude is chemotherapy is affecting every metabolic process in their body, from their immune cells to their digestion to their filtration and hydration regulation, to their mood, to their this, that, and the other thing. And when you get them on an exercise program, you can help them in phase 1. But I also think that in phase 2, there are different types of supplements, and you're probably much more well-versed on the bodybuilding supplements. But I think that creatine and some of these other things, and I'm writing about it in the book. I'm writing about specific types of amino acids that I became familiar with master amino acid pattern years ago. And what I like about it, and I recommend it to cancer patients, is because it digests in the duodenum after 23 minutes, whereas most organ meats, et cetera, take hours to digest and get into the system. Well, if you're on chemotherapy, you're not digesting much of anything because, well, you're on chemotherapy. But if you can digest a protein supplement in 20 minutes in the duodenum into the bloodstream, you can actually help your mitochondria and all these other cellular functions. And you're going to heal at a much better rate. And I would say the same thing with people on GLP-1. If we can get them on specific types of amino acids, creatine, other types of supplements that you're much more familiar with, then they're going to have a better opportunity to be in an anabolic state with exercise, as opposed to continuing down the catabolic pathway. So.
Yeah, creatine is, let me be very specific. Creatine monohydrate is probably the most tried and true, honest supplement. Like, I have supplement sponsors for this podcast. I have friends in the supplement industry, and I always joke around and like, you fucking shills. But creatine is one of those things that is, from early 1800s, I got to fact check that. Like it's 1820 or 32 or something like that is when it was first kind of started being utilized. And it's one of the most tried and true supplements out there that has been tested since the time, and nobody can come up with a good argument not to take it as far as that goes. And, creating more ATP and increasing muscle mass, blah, 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 blah.
Yeah.
So, now, from an industry perspective on this, the thing that's interesting. So right now we had the Arnold Schwarzenegger, the rise of Gold's Gym and the big health club. All right, that was mainstay. And then Curves, do you remember Curves from back in the day, was just like, it was the fastest growing franchise that shit the bed in an epic failure. And then you had this, CrossFit, and then the boutique fitness and Orange Theory F45, and all that has been just kicking ass for the past 12 plus years. And we are seeing a swing of that pendulum back over to the open gym models, what we kind of call that health club model. One of the things I think about from an industry perspective, I'd love your opinion on, if the health clubs take advantage of this, because the small boutiques just don't have the square footage to do this. It's just not going to fit inside of these tight little boutique, 2,500 square foot spots that are just packed. Like there's no square footage to spare.
Right.
But the health clubs will start maybe getting these Ozempic kind of clinics and GLP clinics in there. Mm-hmm. Will we then start seeing brands in the health club? Because again, if the health club, again, like you said, if we had just 20% of the 80 they haven't captured, you're going to have a health club that kind of looks like Disney World or the DMV on steroid, just like this,
exactly.
all the fat out of shape people on fucking ellipticals. And then if you're decently in shape, you're like, I don't want to be associated with this brand of fatties that are getting shots to lose weight. I see like where some health clubs will purposely not do it because they don't want that kind of clientele to walk in, and you'll start having different things there. I'm curious your thoughts.
Okay. So I went through this 30 years ago when we decided to host cancer patients in a high-end health club. And we got some shit for it because people are like, well, I'm paying $150, $180 a month and you got these people with no hair coming in. That's not fair. I mean, you know, who are they? You know,
That's so fucking harsh.
Yeah,
That's so fucking rough.
Yeah, these people that may die in 6 weeks, you know, those bastards.
All these bald, skinny fuckers ruining the vibe of my selfie with their bald heads in the background.
Well, but okay, so two things happened. You know, first of all, our general manager came down with breast cancer. Right about the time when we started this program, she was diagnosed with breast cancer. So the entire narrative in the health club changed. Julie Main, who, by the way, you know, they had the Julie Main Award at the Health and Fitness Association, which was formerly IRSA, every year for women's leaders, because Julie Main took her cancer diagnosis and she ran with it, and she became president of IRSA in the late 1990s. And so, and then she passed away. God, she was only in her mid 50s when she passed away, but she changed the narrative. So if you have a very successful Ozempic program in your health club, people are going to want to be associated with that. We got the best program in the country. And I think this is this opportunity that trainers will have. And again, here's the other thing. Lifetime Fitness or Lifetime Health and Wellness is not in the Ozempic business. They've partnered with Miura to be in the longevity business. And I read about, and I don't know if it's exponential, but I think that they're creating a longevity program, because I don't know if you've ever attended IRSA in the last few years, but they've got the compression sleeves, they've got the cold plunge, they've got the cryotherapy, they've got the portable hyperbaric oxygen therapy. A couple of years ago in Miami, they had the vitamin IVs in the expo, and I'm like, okay, so all of these types of modalities now are plopping into health clubs. So now you're not just a training center, you're a longevity center. And I think that's where Bahram Akradi and you know, his group, Jeff Zweifel, they're in the longevity business. And I think that's well, they're also in the pickleball business, but they're in the longevity business. That's a great, sorry. I just read that yesterday. But that's a great position to be in. So as a health club, if I transition into longevity, yeah, I'm going to get some old people. Yeah, I'm going to get some fatties. Yeah, I'm going to get some people who have no business being in a health club, but they want to learn about what it takes to use exercise and these other modalities to increase the odds of them living a longer and healthier life. And that's a great position to be in too.
I do. And I think it is. It's, you know, when we think of trainers, you know, a lot of trainers right now, they dislike the fact that the fitness professional is not compensated to the degree of a physical therapist or a really good chiro or any, and they feel like, you know, I'm going to steal this from Greg Glassman, who founded CrossFit, but in a world of people at the, you know, however you feel about Greg, but like he had a really good analogy. When shit hits the fan with your health and you haven't been taking care of yourself, obesity, cardiovascular disease, whatever it is, you are like you're at the beach and you're in the water and you need a lifeguard at that point. All right. Things went wrong in the pool or in the water and you need a lifeguard. But if we can get the swim instructor, aka the coach and the trainer, to be the predominant, we can put the lifeguards out of business if everyone knows how to swim for the most part. You would rarely need the lifeguard or rarely need the cardiovascular surgeon if we could get people, you know, with more coaches and trainers. And I always like that analogy. And there's populations. There's a great group fitness concept out of Lexington, Kentucky called Stronger Life. 55 and older is all that they focus on. It's group fitness for 55 and older, and it creates a community. I mean, like if you're 54, get the fuck out of here till next year. Like it's strict 55 and older, but they have a community, because when you get 55 and 60, your friends start dying and you have less of them. You feel more alone in the world and isolated. And I think the same thing could be true with individuals on Ozempic, because they will be the minority for a minute. I believe you're right. I believe it's going to expand to be far more people than you can imagine. But that is also a cohort, and that's a cohort that would probably like being with others who are like them, and having a group fitness class for people getting started. I can see it.
Right. I know you mentioned Glassman and CrossFit, and I mean, 30 years ago, who would have even thunk that you could have a gym in your garage and it would be like one of the biggest models ever. And now we've got F45 and we've got Fitness 19 and we got all these other kinds of these, these kind of low cost brands are just going everywhere. And I work with a company in Los Angeles. Well, I work with Dr. Green, but I also work with a company called Ultimate Performance. And they got in the business by training celebrities and athletes, but 80% of their clients right now are weight loss. And I'm actually publishing research with them on weight loss. Now, they say that they don't have any Ozempic people in their club. I don't necessarily know that I believe that, but that's not the point. They're smart enough to understand that the research component is very much a part of what they're doing. And they're also doing blood labs. Dr. Green has in-house, well, he's a doctor, so they've got in-house blood labs. And one of the things that I'm doing with this certification, Stu, is that about 4 years ago, I wrote a certification on blood labs. And I think that blood labs is going to be a big thing in the industry as well for two reasons. Number one, you can currently get blood labs online. LabCorp and Quest Diagnostics. Yep. You as a consumer can log on to LabCorp, or you can actually go requestatest.com and you can get your own labs, and there'll be a doctor that's affiliated with them, so you can get it in a few days. But I'm also working with a company called Inspect IR out of, I think they're Dallas, Texas, or Fort Worth, Texas, and they're a laboratory company, and they're looking to do breath analysis blood labs, which are already used in law enforcement for alcohol. So they're based on mass spectroscopy, which is the gold standard in laboratory assays. And I'm hoping that by sometime this year, we can actually start getting some of these things out there, because that will absolutely positively change the narrative on health clubs. Because if you can breathe into a box and 3 minutes later get your cholesterol, your glucose, your A1C, your C-reactive protein, your LDL, your triglyceride, and you don't need to have a prescription for it, and it's validated through laboratory assays, it will change the game. Because I interviewed a friend of mine who was a doctor years ago, and he said over 90% of physicians' decisions are based on the results of blood labs. And when I trained my clients in diabetes 30 years ago, it was, and I'll say this until the day I die, exercise in diabetes is blood sugar dependent. If you're low blood sugar, you better take some glucose and wait a little bit, or you're going to vapor lock. If you are at 215, you can go run a marathon as long as you're monitoring. So it's blood sugar dependent. We're going to see this with Ozempic. It's going to be it's going to be blood sugar dependent. It's going to be, they're going to have to take blood sugar before exercise sessions. I'm sorry, whether they're using the patch with their cell phone, they can look at, and they can get a reading 100 times a day. That's what I'm going to recommend, or a finger stick method or something, because these people are probably walking around at 87 milligrams per deciliter, which ain't good, especially with exercise. You're looking, even though they're not diabetic, you're still going to get a hyperglycemic crash. So anyway, that's just my
like NutriSense. Yeah, like Levels, NutriSense, all those brands that have the patch that go on and monitor your blood sugar, and it pricks you in the arm, kind of thing, and you could look at the app. No, there's a ton of these, and there's even the ones that you were talking about where you could breathe into as well. I was training for the Chicago Marathon all last year, working with a nutritionist, and I got super geeked out into like when my blood sugar was crashing on a 16-mile run and vice versa, just to time up my fuel. So yeah, it allows trainers to also geek out. I think, here's the thing for trainers. In the 80s and 90s, and even up until now, you can really get away being a fuck off trainer, staring at your cell phone while and counting someone's reps. I think the bar is going to be raised, where the trainers that take over and are making $200,000, $300,000 a year are going to be the ones that start incorporating. They have to get more education, and they have to start utilizing more concierge level services with their clients. They got to go beyond.
I like that. I just that you just hit the ball out of the park right now. I think that trainers who work with Ozempic patients should consider themselves to be concierge trainers, and they're going to need to know about I love the geek out thing too. They're going to need to know about glucose technology, and I actually work with a company in Virginia called Weld Health. It's Chris Crater's company, and we developed John Moriarty and myself developed about a year and a half ago a software program called Healthy Stats, and I just sent him the wireframes last week on Ozempic. So trainers, I'm hoping he's going to incorporate it here soon. But when the course comes out, trainers will be able to get the blood lab course for free as a part of the Ozempic course. But they're also going to, be able to get like the Healthy Stats, whatever. All the foundation has already been laid here for being a concierge trainer. The software is there for healthcare outcomes.
It's for any trainers. Yeah, but even from a sales perspective, imagine Sally goes and she sees, right? She does a consultation with two of them. One of them asks her, so how much weight do you want to lose, Sally? How many pounds do you want to lose? And the other trainer says, so who's your general physician? She goes, why? Well, I work with everyone that you're currently working with. I want your general physician. I want your physical therapist. I want any of those people. I've got a Slack channel where I communicate with them, or a portal or somewhere where we can communicate. Where do you get your blood labs done? I don't get blood labs done. Should I be getting labs done? And again, you just see the value proposition, which is why this fucker can only charge $80 a session and this one can charge $180 a session. Right. And it's just, again, it's how much more are you getting involved in these positions? Right. Talk to me about your certs. Oh, go ahead. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Well, I want to talk about certs, but it's interesting that you mentioned, dollars per hour. Well, this trainer is highest level. They're charging $250. I can't afford that. Well, you can now, because the company that I'm working with, LifeCore Group in Phoenix, Arizona, Jason Paul, over the last year has been working with some selective medical fitness clients in health clubs in using health savings account dollars for health club programs, not memberships, because the folks from the Health and Fitness Association are going to be flying out to Washington, D.C. in about 3 weeks to lobby Congress for the FIT Act, which has been bouncing around the industry for 30 years, because they want the government to tell them that they can get HSA dollars for memberships, which is average $50 a month. Whereas right now, today, you probably have 10% of the members in your health club who could be using their health savings account debit card, like I do, for wellness services, whether it's personal training, massage therapy, Reiki work, Pilates, yoga, whatever. That money is already available. And by the end of this year, I'm hoping that early 2025, that LifeCore Group will be launching the nation's first wellness health insurance company. So your premium will pay a reduced rate because you are a health club member, and you'll be able to use a portion of that premium for health club services, just like the HSA dollars are paying for. So like I say, I'm trying to build the farm now. I'm laying the foundation on what I think could be the strongest era within the health and fitness field.
Does that require that act to get passed?
No, God, no. I'm not a fan of the government's going to help you do blah, 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 because I look at COVID as an unmitigated disaster. You and I, as part of being a medical researcher, one of the things I've researched over the last 30 years, and I probably have almost 1,000 articles here on my shelves, is on the vaccine industry. And I knew right when they were talking about getting rid of, ivermectin and all these other types of drugs. And, there was a doctor in Detroit that was looking at high dose vitamin D and vitamin C, and he published one of the first papers. And to make a long story very, very short, my faith in how the government actually handles people's health is at an all-time low, as it is with most Americans. That's why this is such a great time, is that, they're going to say, well, my doctor's just going to put me on another drug. Well, why don't you go to a health club and do this, this, and this? They have the software, they have the blood labs, they have the medical relationships, they have the infrastructure, they have the concierge trainers, et cetera, et cetera. They can do this. And so you were talking about certifications, and I want to let you jump back in there.
Yeah. So, first off, what does it take to get, when you say you have a certification, what does that mean? What are the bodies that you have to get together? Do you have to get insurance companies to approve this? Like, how do you get a certification created for something as niche as this?
Well, it's an interesting question. I started my education consulting with International Sports Sciences Association when they were here in California. So I really got a taste of how certification programs are produced. And I know that the industry is they're all into accreditation and all this kind of stuff, but the level of certifications that I've put forth, like I say, I did the nation's first exercise medicine certification. I did 2 cancer wellness certifications. I did a home healthcare certification, which was ergonomics, nutrition, et cetera. I did a blood lab certification. I have a healthcare outcomes certification. So my work is at high levels, but because I'm working with Eric Malzone and his company, I'm sure that we're going to distribute this through some of the major organizations. So I'm going to be a conduit as to how this is going to go. But I don't validate my work because ACE says so. ACE does what they do, sure, and I do what I do. I've had a certification company for over 20 years. And just because I don't work with some of the major players now, I will be. That doesn't concern me at all. My main concern that we spoke about earlier in the show is producing something now at the highest level for the industry to get them to move way beyond what they think that their industry is. They need to be something better than themselves now, because this could be, and I'm not trying to be some sappy B movie here, but this could be something that the health club industry could absolutely turn around the mindset of most Americans who have relied on only their doctors or only their dietitians for help in this process over the last 40 years. Because you and I both know it's still about junk food. It's still about sodas. It's still about overeating. It's still about, not understanding food as fuel, as opposed to just, let's just go get, let's just overeat again. So I think the trainers, I love the fact that you talked concierge, because if I were a concierge trainer today, I would say, I am going to work on your eating program. I want to absolutely know exactly what goes into your mouth in the next 6 weeks. Because if you're on Ozempic, I know what's going in. Nothing. That's going to be easy. I know what's going in. You didn't eat for 2 days. Well, we have to now fix that. We have to do something that's very low in calories, but high nutrient density to get you to start feeling better and able to start lifting. Because I would say that in Dr. Green's case, if these people are on 1.5 or higher milligrams each week or each month of Ozempic, then they may not have had a good solid meal for a long time. And one of my other colleagues in Atlanta, Georgia, Dr. Stephanie Rimka, also works with Ozempic patients. And she's actually in favor of the drug in certain instances, but she also recommends, eating beef, eating chicken, having organ meats at certain times of the day. She's more of a paleo diet because she thinks it's going to get them through that, because it does take longer to digest and etc. So, there's lots of different theories on it, but I'm still going to come back to the fact that it is going to be a really interesting opportunity for the profession.
For the certification, is it at your own pace? How does that work?
Well, most certifications in the industry are at your own pace, and then they have a 2-day workshop. I'm going to be having a series of online videos, but they're going to be online videos forever. My social media team and we've already got about 15 videos done, and in May or June, I'll start producing a whole series of them, and I'll start using everyone else's. I'm not in this because I think that this is going to be like this huge money-making venture. It's going to do well, I think, but I want to gather information from some of the best minds in the country that trainers can look at, like Dr. Green in Los Angeles, like Dr. Rimka in Atlanta, and then a woman named Dr. Melissa Peterson, who is a naturopath in North Carolina, who's been working with Ozempic patients for 2 or 3 years now too. They have these theories that they've already put together on foods, on physical activity, etc., in their practice that I'm bringing in on board this. Dr. Peterson's going to be contributing the longevity portion to this certification manual. So, I want to bring out the big gun people and say, yeah, this is here. There's a lot of information that's already here. So anyway.
And if a trainer is like, okay, it's probably worth my time and effort and dollars to get educated, because when we were talking before the podcast, this isn't 36 months away. It's more like 36 days away. It's more, it's going to be a more consistent topic. Right. And yeah, it's coming. And a lot of us, it's kind of like, again, going back to COVID. I remember on COVID, I was like, oh, that sounds like some silly bullshit happening over there. Never going to happen here. Right.
And all of a sudden, boom.
and then next thing it's there. So if I'm a trainer, again, I'm glad to be retired from that career path. I enjoyed it while I was there. It was phenomenal. But if I was a trainer today, I would be thinking, I always like inverse thinking, like, what are the things that could fuck up my career path now? Like, what am I not prepared for? What are the things? And one of them, it could be the introduction of a GLP that goes mainstream, and I know nothing. I know shit about it. And my lack of educating myself on it, at the end of the day, is only going to better me. There's no education, I think, even if it doesn't go with that practical application or get used, that's worthless. I think it's all, if you're an industry, I tell people, you're not a personal trainer. You need to be a fitness industry savant. You need to understand what's happening around the industry if you want to have opportunities in this industry. Otherwise, it's going to be you and your 7 ants that you train in your fucking garage for the rest of your life. Right. You need to have kind of a more global look at this thing. Right. So how does someone get started? Like, if someone wants to look into the cert or all that, what would be the best way for them to research it, to learn more about it?
Well, in about 3 weeks, I'm going to be launching GLP-1trainer.com, which will give them information about the certification, GLP-1trainer.com. And then, like I say, I'm going to be posting on social media starting next week. I'm going to be doing almost weekly updates on Ozempic and GLPs and blood labs and all these other things that I've been talking about. So trainers will be able to get this information in bits and pieces. And as I told you recently, a few minutes ago, that I'm going to include the blood lab course with the GLP-1 education course. So I think trainers are going to get a double dose of this medical technology stuff that they're going to need to know, because it's going to be hugely important. All of these things are going to be important. And so I'm every day I have to think about, okay, how am I going to put all this information together and really launch this out? So I've got mailing list, I've got a MailChimp, I've got all these types of things that are happening. And then I get the opportunity to do cool shows like this, which I'm sure is going to go up to probably 5 or 10 million people next week, right?
Yeah. Are you familiar with, it's a YouTube channel, a gentleman named Derek. He owns a YouTube channel called More Plates, More Dates. You familiar with him?
I am not.
Real incredibly popular YouTube channel. The kid is very well spoken, very educated. I don't know his actual scholastic education, but one of the things he does, he reviews blood labs, from people who say that they're natty, like they're not on steroids or TRT or whatever. He reviews blood labs and gives feedback on it. And he's not a doctor. He doesn't have whatever. He just self-educated himself on that. And one of the things, again, I would say, if someone's on the fringe of this with the GLP thing, I'm telling you, the blood work thing is huge. I get my blood work done every 6 months. Every 6 months, blood work's done, guaranteed. I've got my LabCorp app. When you were saying that, I have all my records there. It shows the differences, test over test, year over year. And I would tell anyone listening to this, if you're not sold on the GLP thing, let me tell you, I definitely do the blood. More people are getting blood work now with HRT and TRT being as popular as it has gotten, where that's a requirement. And if you're also, again, able to tell your client, I'm able to look at your blood work and I'm able to give you feedback based on what I see, you just increase the value of what you can charge this individual without having to be there for 60 minutes working his ass out. This is something you could do in a Zoom call or an email and give feedback on.
Perfect. Yeah, absolutely. Because the ability to get a blood lab online with request a test or LabCorp takes the physician out of the equation per se. There's a doctor who will review it. If you've got a lab that's off the charts, their physician is going to call your physician and say, hey, Stu's got this, his C-reactive protein is is in the stratosphere, you're going to have a conversation. And Stu may not even know what a C-reactive protein is, but it's your inflammatory marker, and it's got to be something that's 1 or less or something. And so if it's at 26, there's an issue. So those are really big things, and I really appreciate you talking about the fact that blood labs are important, because they've been important to me throughout my career, but most trainers have never paid much attention to them. So
yeah, it's funny, man. Go ahead.
Well, you don't have to be a hematologist.
I was just saying, it's so funny that the blood work and all that. When I was training for the marathon, it was that and VO2 test. And I went to school. I got my degree, my bachelor's in exercise phys. VO2 max testing was the bane of my existence. I thought it was the lamest, dumbest thing fucking ever. I never cared about it until I had a performance goal in which this metric was now important to me. And it's crazy now how many more people training. Running is more popular now than it's ever been. And the amount of people seeking out VO2 max testing centers near me, the place where I would go, 6 to 9 week backlog waiting list.
Wow.
Of people testing to do VO2 testing. It was just, it's so interesting how a lot of this stuff that isn't necessarily new, but it's now just getting maybe the respect and the attention it deserves.
Right. Well, it's interesting. VO2 testing for me has always been interesting because I was a runner in college. I was a track and field guy. So VO2 is important. And I've got a colleague in Scottsdale, Arizona, who did the original VO2 max testing on Greg LeMond. And I thought, what a cool job that would have been in the early 80s to get this guy who I think still has the highest VO2 max of any American athlete. And that's what kind of makes this cool. We've got a new a metabolic testing center coming in Santa Barbara. I mean, we got 50,000 health clubs and boutiques here. And we got a bunch of longevity centers now, but this is going to be the first metabolic VO2 type testing center. So maybe he'll have a 3 to 6 week waiting list. I don't know, but you're right. All right. So, and the thing about body composition, when I was at that other school that's not Ohio State, we did a lot of whatever school that may be. We did a lot of work in body composition because Catch and McCardle was the textbook and Vic Catch was my professor. So we learned a lot about body fat. So I get into healthcare and I said, well, how come doctors don't use this? They just put them on a scale. Well, number one is they don't care that much. And henceforth, we do not understand the lean body mass to fat ratios if they're in the doctor's office. But because we have InBody and all these other great, body composition, BIA and bod pod and all these other things that you can actually see, it is going to be, and I'm glad we also are on this, it is going to be critically important for trainers to have an InBody or another type of body composition tool that does lean mass, body fat, and water for their Ozempic patients. The water is the most important variable they're going to need to know. And if you have that, you're golden. Your stake just went up again. The blood labs, the body comp are the two critical things. And thankfully, the industry has been embracing body fat testing for the last 40 years. Now it's going to be mission critical. And I am so happy that everything, like you just said, is now starting to come around again. The body, if you can, all these body. I was in Los Angeles in March for the HAFA conference, the URSA conference, and there must have been 15 body companies there. They have a body scanner type thing now. Fantastic. I said to each one of these things, you guys have no idea how important this is going to be for all of these weight loss patients. They're going to come in and they're going to need to know these numbers. Fantastic.
Yeah. Eric's got me. I'm going to have the founder of Spren. Spren is using the LiDAR on the phone and some additional tech for some basic body scan. And I get a DEXA scan done every 8 to 12 weeks. I do DEXA. Mm-hmm. And I've used this technology, Spren, and it's pretty fucking accurate compared to DEXA. I mean, it was close, and without the $22,000 price tag of a DEXA machine. Right. Yeah, but Eric, this has been great, man. I've enjoyed rapping with you on this, even though you're a Michigan guy. You're okay in my book, dude. Well,
I'm a
listen. So for everyone listening, go ahead.
Well, I mean, I live in California, and you know, I'm part of Michigan right now because I'm on their mentorship program. So I'm actually training students who are in their kinesiology program now. And again, I'm giving back to my alma mater in terms of training the next generation. And I got to tell you, these students are so happy because I'm doing the stuff that they would love to do in 30 years. I've had a really, really interesting career, you know, with and now I'm applying everything. So I'm actually all of my friends are retired, Stu. All the guys that I went to high school with, they retired a long time ago. I'm starting 2 companies now. You know, I've got 3 business plans ready to go out. You know, it's just, I have so many interesting things happening with my career. Every day it's like, wow, I got a lot of stuff to do. So it's a great place to be in, I think.
That's good. It's good. It keeps you out of trouble and it keeps you young. But I'm going to have, so the timing of this will work out well. I'm going to have this will probably time up decently, like when the site hits, but I'm going to have a link to the site, everything down there for everyone. You guys listening, you want to check it out and see what Eric's got going on. I'll have the links all down there. But Eric, man, I greatly appreciate you taking the time. I know you're busy as fuck and coming on today and talking shop.
All right. Appreciate it, man.